we're back on set, and we now have none other than Dr. Harold Persaud, who is a psychologist here with us. Dr. Persaud, welcome to Let's Talk with Lakshmee.
Thank you, Sister Lakshmee, for inviting me here on your program, and it's a great pleasure to be here in your company.
Thank you very much. Well, I know you've been backstage listening to the stories with Sukrie and her domestic violence situation.
Sure.
Now, as a psychologist, I just want you, first of all, to tell our viewers a little bit about your background in psychology and what you do.
All right, I'm counseling psychologist Dr. Harold Persaud, and I'm the owner of the Institute for Psychotherapy and Counseling in New Jersey. And I get a lot of referrals from the courts from abusers or men who are charged with drunk driving or employee assistance programs where the supervisor smells alcohol on the employee's breath, and the supervisor refers him for counseling.
So, if somebody comes in to your office, so these people are the abuser.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yes.
What do you say to them?
Now, first of all, many of my clients will not come to see me voluntarily. They have some kind of court involvement, meaning that they were arrested and charged with domestic violence, spouse abuse, like I said before. Now, whenever he's referred by the courts, I begin with a comprehensive assessment because I have to gauge the magnitude of the problem I'm dealing with here. Now, based on my evaluation initially, I would recommend that he comes to see me for therapy once per week or twice per week, depending on my evaluation of him and depending on his history and severity of use. So my therapeutic interventions is predicated upon my initial evaluation with him.
Now, during your evaluations, you've obviously dealt with a lot of abusers.
Sure, and survivors also.
Why do you think that they abuse? Why are they an abuser? Is it maybe the way they grew up? Is it alcoholism? Is it maybe a personal situation? What is making someone abuse someone? Like Sukrie. First she was hit. I mean, I have to say, kudos to Sukrie. Congratulations.
Right.
She took the first step by saying, no, don't hit me.
Right.
And very fortunate for her, and I've actually never heard of this before, her abuser never hit her again.
Right.
But he started to mentally abuse her.
Okay.
Why are they abusing?
Right. There are many and varied reasons why someone would abuse his spouse or abuse his wife. There are many, many reasons. Now, some people would try to blame their abuse, their anger, their resentment on childhood problems. Many of them would blame it on alcohol. Many of them would blame it on her, project the problem on the victim. And they would tell me in therapy, say, you know what, Dr. Prasads, if you had the wife I had, you would be beating her too, and you would be drinking her too. Or they'll say, you know what, if you had the boss I had, blame it on the supervisor. The supervisor is giving me stress, I'm stressed out, that's why I'm drinking. And whenever I'm drinking, I get home late at night, I'm having problems with her. So they tend to blame problems on childhood problems. Yes,
blame.
Right. An abuser will always project blame on someone else, unless he goes through those stages of denial and say, you know what, maybe the problem is me. I am the problem, but it will take a lot of sessions for me to penetrate that wall of denial, because the abuser will come to therapy sessions and say, you know what, sir, I don't have no problems. The judge sent me here, I'm here because of the judge. And that's why in my therapy groups, I have to go through, he has to say in his group why he's here and what problems led him to be in therapy. Okay, he has to go through acceptance and accepting that he does have a problem.
How do you get them to admit this? I mean, let's say I'm an abuser.
Yes.
Okay? And another thing I want to mention is it could be a woman being an abuser as well.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
let's say I'm abusing my husband.
Right.
Okay? I'm sent to you. I'm not going to say that. Why would I admit that?
Right. Well, if you're sent to me...
I don't want to make myself look bad. How do you get these people to open up?
Good question. Great question. Now, when you come to see me, there is a jail sentence sitting on your head 9 out of 10 times. And I don't see it as being punitive. I call it a therapeutic leverage for me.
Okay.
Because if you're sent by the court, you're sent by the judge, and you have a jail sentence sitting on your head, you have to cooperate, and the judge will tell you, as part of your disposition, of your court disposition, that you are to enter and complete anger management treatment, you are to enter and complete successfully alcoholism treatment. And I have to write a report to the judge. So your cooperation is very important. So 9 out of 10 times, the abuser will say, you know what, I have to do this, to get back my driver's license, or I have to do this to stay out of jail.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
These abusers are being sent to you for therapy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
By the judge.
Yes.
So obviously they've done something wrong, right?
Sure, yes.
So they're coming to you.
Right.
What was their punishment before? Because if they're not coming to you for therapy, well, then they'll go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
What's their penalty before this? I mean, let's say Sukrie's ex-abuser
Right.
beat her, hit her head, she had to get stitches. Did anything happen to him? I mean, the people that you're dealing with.
Well, 9 out of 10 clients I'm dealing with, like I said, were sent by the court. Now, in her case, maybe a report was never made, but 1 out of 10 times, like I said, the abuser is in extreme denial. You know what? The problem is not me, like I said. The problem is my wife. The problem is my children. My children are getting poor grades. The problem is my boss. The problem is my childhood. That's where they try to project problems elsewhere, except looking at themselves. After several sessions of therapy, like I said, I'm able to penetrate that wall of denial. And then there comes a stage, I call it minimization of denial. And they say, you know what? You are right. I do drink sometimes, but I drink beers. I don't drink rum. He's a worse alcoholic over there. I'm not a real alcoholic because I'm still married. I still have my wife. I'm still working.
So that abuser's okay. They're not that bad, right?
But that's what he's going to tell
That's
himself.
what he thinks.
Because he's still in denial. And it's still minimization of denial, like I said. And then, finally...
Kind of like what Sukrie's abuser did. First
Exactly.
he hit her.
Yes.
And, okay, she said no. She
Right.
stopped him. So now he's not hitting her anymore.
Right.
He's verbally abusing her. So it's
Right.
not that bad, right? Like,
Right.
he would be one of those guys that come to you and say, "Oh, it's not that bad, I'm
Because
just cursing her out."
it's minimization of denial. But, we were raised to say, they say, you know what, words don't hurt, words are wind, but words do hurt. Words do hurt. Because a physical hit could heal, but the words, is psychological, is mental, is emotional. Because someone could say stuff to you to real hurt your feelings real bad and move you to tears. So
And you're never
words
gonna
do
forget
hurt.
that.
Words do hurt.
I actually really admire something that Sukrie had said about her son punching the wall, and she kind of left that there.
Right.
She didn't fix it. But you know what I was thinking about, Sukrie? That's a reminder to your son. Look what you've done. You've damaged something. And that can never be replaced. So be careful what you say, what you do, because you can't fix it afterwards. So I think it's a good sign that you left that there. Dr. Persaud, give Sukrie some advice. First of all, give her some advice about her kids. She was a chain reaction. Her ex-abuser abused her. She then turned to alcohol and drugs herself,
Right.
and in turn neglected her children for a little while. And she, as a mother, because she was abused, this was her chain reaction, but she's hurt. She was in tears a few minutes ago because she thinks she did something wrong, but
Right.
it's really not her fault.
Right.
And the first step was admitting. I'd like you to give her some advice towards her children, and what can she do
Right.
to start repairing that?
Right. She has to understand that alcoholism is a family disease. It's a disease. It has been classified by the American Medical Association as a disease. Some people will say, you know what, alcoholism is not a disease, it's what we call a biopsychosocial disorder. But alcoholism is a disease. And the disease does not only affect the abuser and the abused, it affects everyone in the family. The children are affected. Because the children, he may not be hitting the children physically, but the children are there and they are witnessing the constant barrage of abuse that the father or the abuser is inflicting on the mom. So they are affected also. And then what her son did, he punched the wall. that's an easily angered problem area. And maybe he has seen that, maybe he saw his father did that. So that is his way of asking for help. He's asking for help. But in your case specifically, I was listening in the background there and was deeply moved and was very touched by your strength. This is a very strong woman.
She's a very strong
Very,
woman.
very strong. We call it strong in her spot. And I would like to, we call it in therapy, give her a positive build-up. I would like to give her a positive build-up and her family also. Because she was able, not a lot of women could really say, you know what, I'm going to leave this relationship. And they don't have that inner strength, the ego strength, to get up and leave because they are trapped. It's a cycle that they are trapped there. But she's a very strong woman. And she was able to get herself out of that trap. And here she is today. She wrote a book. I saw her in several television programs. I read it in the newspapers. She's a great example of what you, the women out there, who are watching this program, could aspire to be. And if you are being abused, or you know if someone is being abused, be like Sukrie. She's a great role model. As a matter of fact, I draw a lot of strength from her story. And her story is therapeutic to me as a psychologist.
One thing I would say about a lot of our West Indian people, sometimes we may have our daughters who are being abused. Let's talk about something. Let's say I know a specific daughter was abused. So her husband hit her, right? And she went back home and she's like, Mom, my husband hit me. And the mother says, you're married. Turn back right around. Go back home. That happens a lot.
Right.
A lot in our community, right? Because of the shame. You're married, right? What are you gonna do? You can't leave your husband. What would you say to those families that are turning their daughters away and saying, you married him, deal with it? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, please, if this situation, if your daughter comes to you and say, you know what, I'm being abused at home, please do not turn around and send her back to the abuser. Please provide an intervention, get help. Listen to what your child is saying to you. Okay? The husband evidently he needs help. He's asking for help. Okay? Please provide an intervention. Seek help. There are many, many resources out there that would assist you, would help you, and give you what we call the ammunition and the strategies to counter-strike those negative antisocial behaviors. And someone who has easily angered problem, we call it, easily angered and impulsive problems. Seek help.
Thank you very much. Well, Dr. Persaud, thank you very much for coming on the show, giving advice to Sukrie Budram, giving advice to all of our viewers. We have another therapist here in the studio. We have none other than Diane Madray, and we're going to bring her on next.
Thank you.
Viewers, we're back with none other than Diane Madray. Diane is a mental health professional. Diane, welcome first of all to Let's Talk with Lakshmee.
Lakshmee, thank you for having me here, Sukrie, and all of us. Appreciate
You're
it very
welcome.
much.
It's a pleasure having you here, and I know you've been backstage listening to the conversation that I've been having with Sukrie as well as Dr. Persaud.
Correct.
I know you have a lot of experience when it comes to violence and people who have been subjected to, let's say, domestic violence or any other type of abuse. I'd like you to give us some words, and what were you thinking backstage listening to the conversation that I've been having with Sukrie and Dr. Persaud?
Well, Lakshmee, I'm glad you brought that up, because as you were wrapping up, and the comments that Dr. Persaud was talking about when you asked about giving advice to a family that might be out there for, having a daughter come and say that she's having a problem, but go back and deal with
Go
your
back home,
situation.
right.
Right. And coming from a culture that we come from, that happens quite often.
Right.
But here's the thing that what happened with the experience that we've had in Guyana for the domestic violence public awareness that we started back in November. There's a case that was out with a young lady, 28 years old. She actually was married, living with her husband.
Okay.
And she was beaten very badly, went back and forth. The police in Guyana did not give the support that they should have, and I can tell you about that after. She went back and forth about 3 times. Her mother tried, as you know, the culture takes it, where you know you're having a problem, we'll try to make your marriage work, speak to both of them, so forth. Which I know Sukrie may have experienced some of that as well.
Right.
And then what happened was the fourth time when she goes back home, her mother told her, okay, you're not going back, because I think that was the last time when she was physically beaten very badly, where this guy stripped her naked and beat her very badly. And I remember when I was listening to the story from the mother, and she didn't go back home, but she tried to empower herself, which many women try to do. She got a job, started working, was doing quite well, and about 5 months into the job, and I remember someone said to me, be careful how you're running those workshops, because these women will show up at the door with their suitcases, and these guys will come after you. But at that point was when I started hearing more about the domestic violence cases where women were dying. And in December of 2009, it was brought to my attention we had 3 cases at the center. And I said, you know, we have to do something about this. So I started providing counseling and providing the groups, because my specialty in my background was primarily in group dynamics. I've done individual therapy like Dr. Prasads, but going back to Guyana the past 8 years, most of my work has been primarily in groups.
I actually have went down to go to an orphanage.
Okay.
And the orphanage in Chesney was an orphanage / battered women home.
Okay.
And I was pleasantly surprised to see that, and to see that something like this is happening in the West Indies, where women are getting support. Now, how many women are actually going there, I don't know. I know I've heard that women do come, but they don't really stay. They end up going back to the husband because it's a comfort zone. That's what they know. You know, they want to have that family. You know, they want people to look at them like, my family's okay. And, you know, in the West Indies, I think women think it's okay that my husband is physically abusing me, or what happened with Sukrie, mentally abusing me. I'm going to say sexually abusing me. There are a lot of women in Guyana that their husbands have...
And it does happen, because I have a woman from our center, when you talk about the sexual abuse, because it's important that for them to recognize, because when someone, you know, even a spouse, does something like that to you, it constitutes as rape.
Yes.
You know, and I have a woman from our center who was experiencing domestic violence and sat there in a session with her husband and said that you know, he just, you know, basically have sexual intercourse with her and without her permission, and she says no, and he just pins her down. And
but it's okay,
there's
because
a traumatic,
that's her
yeah,
husband, right?
but see, one of the things as perpetrators, they don't seem to understand the traumatic impact that can happen to a woman when something like that happens. You know, because as Dr. Persaud will tell you also, there's a traumatic part that comes into play, and post-traumatic stress, you know, the different degrees of that can really impact on someone. But talking about women that are coming from rural communities, that don't know their rights, don't know the resources that are available, that's one of the things that, you know, in Guyana, that, you know, more has to be done, you know. And I know my take here is looking at the Guyanese community in Guyana, but we're taking this movement that we started in Guyana, and it wasn't a one-day event we did on November 25th. We're continuing this. Part of my experience the last 4 months in Guyana was court advocacy, counseling, group work, every which way we can tackle the situation to bring domestic violence to the forefront, because one of the things that has to be recognized is domestic violence is a crime. It is a crime. You know, as Dr. Persaud said, that you know, alcoholism is a disease, right? Domestic violence is a crime and must be recognized as such. And we need to bring it to the forefront. So part of this movement initially was to build the public awareness, broaden it to a large degree.
And Diane, what was your feedback on that? How many people showed up to the event?
We had our public event was at the GCC, the Georgetown Cricket Club.
Okay.
The border, you know, the former border cricket club, and we had a pretty massive
It's
turnout.
about 3,000 to 5,000 people, I believe.
I don't remember the
Stream
instruments of
in and
gauge
out.
it. Yeah, because it was an all-day event. During the day, we had many NGOs who provided services in the area, like Help and Shelter, Red Thread, ROC, Rights of the Children. We had Kids First Fund, which is the former First Lady who's part of our program. My organization, IMRAC, and many others who came together during the day providing information and resources. And people were actually coming in. And then later that day, what we did was we built the public awareness by bringing it to the forefront in creating domestic violence public awareness through the arts, whereby we had poetry, arts, dance, skits, and stuff like that. So our women's group, our youth group, the kids got involved in it. And because what happens in the rural community, many of the women cannot read and write. So trying to sit there and do a comprehensive workshop with these women, it's not going to come across.
Not easy.
No, it's not like, I mean, I did a lecture at UG, you know, on counseling and therapy, and that was a different audience. But when you're talking about women from a rural community where you're going to talk about group, you're not going to talk about the different types of therapy and things like that. You have to break it down. And what I usually do in groups is I try to make it a little bit more interactive and break it down more simplistic that the women can comprehend. So a great way of bringing it to the forefront, because many of the women watch television. So what we did was create the public awareness through the arts. The women created a skit. I gave them the theme and I said, okay, it was called Don't Underestimate the Power of This Guyanese Woman. And
Okay.
they took the theme and
You ran
made
with
fun.
it.
Oh, absolutely. And Sukrie will tell you.
I wore
It
the
was-
shirt.
Yeah, it was amazing. We had shirts, which we have to give you one.
Okay.
Um,
How are their husbands reacting to this? How are the men in Guyana reacting to this?
We've had good feedback from some, but I must say we've had bad feedback. Another case in point, without mentioning names, I had a man who got arrested.
I was going to ask you, are you getting any threats?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So the guy called me on the phone, started threatening me, and telling me how I destroyed his home and his marriage and what he's going to do to me and report me. You know, we were sort of like getting some negative criticism that we were like men haters, but that's not what we're doing. We're trying to advocate in some of the women's behalf that don't have a voice,
And the
many of the
face.
women that have died.
The face of domestic violence.
Yeah.
It's our faces. Faces
Right.
of our abusers, faces of our sons. That's the face. It doesn't discriminate men and women.
Diane, tell me, let's say I'm a woman being abused, okay? My husband's beating me every night, he's having affairs, I don't work, I don't have an education, I know nothing. I got married at a very young age, I got pregnant, 5 little kids running around in Guyana or in the West Indies, wherever I may be. My husband's beating me, but he's taking care of me. He's paying the bills. My kids are fed. They have clothes. They're going to school. I have food on the table. I have clothes to wear. But he's beating me. What should I do?
You know, it's interesting that you said that, Lakshmee, because we had many women like that coming from rural communities, and one of the things that I wanted to touch on is that domestic violence is not, they're not just housewives that go through it. There are professional women like Sukrie, myself, who experience domestic violence, you know, but women like housewives who, like, perfect example of what you just
If
described.
I leave, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
So one of the things is the self-image and the self-worth that some of these women feel, because if you take a mirror, and I've done a workshop like this before,
Okay.
where I took a mirror and we passed it around the room and had everyone look at it and say, well, what do you see in yourself, or where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And it was so interesting, the dynamics that started, you know, filtering from that conversation. And it was the self-worth that they were talking about. But one of the things that comes with that is to help the women to find a way to empower themselves, because, you know, as you said, you know, they have the kids, the husband is supporting them financially, so okay, let me take the beating. But what is your self-worth? What are you worth?
Now, Sukrie, tell me about this book, Breakout. You just wrote this book.
Yes?
I know it has a lot to do with your experiences
Correct.
of being abused.
Yes.
Tell our audiences a little bit about Breakout.
Okay. Breakout is my story about my feelings as a victim, what I was feeling at the time when I was getting abused, what was going through my mind, what my pain level was, how I walked the road, how I got my courage back, my strength, my faith, and how I was able to use what I gathered along the road to be able to extricate myself from an abusive relationship. That book takes a person through the mind of a victim, right? Which is me, now a survivor. In addition to that, every chapter in that book has a lessons learned. And my readers will be amazed because, boy, I made a lot of mistakes. I made some not so good decisions, and I made some good decisions. So at the end of each chapter, which I made the chapters really small, very, very easy read, and it tells, hey, when I got hit the first time, I should have called the cops. That was a mistake. I can only change myself. So these lessons are great for the readers to take home and say, you know what? I'm a victim, but you know what? I know somebody that loves me should not be abusing me. I don't like the way I'm feeling. Let me focus a little bit on me, because victims, let me tell you what we do. 99.9% of our thoughts are how to make the abusers happy, how to make changes in ourselves so that the abuse ends. So this book walks a person through, step by step, falling in love, getting married, seeing the onset of the abuse, seeing the abuse coming to an end. And it ended the day my abuser walked out of the driveway, and the healing starts. That's the first book. The healing part will come later.
I definitely hope that this book will help a lot of our viewers, a lot of people who are going through domestic violence at home. I hope it will encourage them, give them strength to say no to violence. And I commend you, I commend Diane, Dr. Persaud, everyone part of your group for doing such a great job and making a change, making a difference in our Indo-Caribbean community, because it's not easy for anyone. And I'm not going to speak for any other culture except for mine, but I know growing up, being around other women, families, it's very, very difficult for women to say no to violence. So thank you. Please continue all of the great work that you're doing. And I definitely hope that they are helping someone who's watching. So guys, thank you for coming down to Let's Talk with Lakshmee. It's been a pleasure, and good luck.
Thank you.
Let's talk with Lakshmee. Here we go now, here we go now. Let's talk with Lakshmee. Bring the artists, bring the dancers. Let's talk with Lakshmee. Again now. Let's talk with Lakshmee. Bring the topics,